You're watching Open Agenda. Here's our host, Joe White.
Welcome to Open Agenda. I'm your host, Joe White, and today's episode is going to tie together just how campaign donations for the county executive's office in Wicomico County can also be tied to top policy-making decisions by the county executive. In the studio with me is Mr. Jim Atkins from Ardella. Thanks for coming out.
Good morning. Yep.
So before we get started on exactly what we're going to discuss with campaign donations, I think we should really talk about why are you and I here to discuss this. And neither one of us are politicians. And
No.
we have you ever donated significant amount of money to any politician?
No.
Yeah, myself included.
Yes.
But we both do attend the workings of the county government, correct? I mean, we go to public hearings.
Yeah, public hearings and meetings and different agendas that they have to just keep up with what's going on in the county.
And we've also been at press conferences together.
Yes.
The county executives had, and I'd like to watch I try to get as much updated information as I can from her executive exclusive. Although when I do cross-check some of those facts, I have to take it with a grain of salt.
Yes.
Okay. So I think we both agree that these are important things, but we probably see some things being there in person that maybe some of the average viewers don't see.
Yeah, it's a little different when you're in person and you see some of the minutia of the movements and the eye contacts that you're able to pick up a little more than you are just watching it on television.
Yeah. But at the end of the day, we're both just concerned citizens.
Yes, exactly. Yeah.
So let's talk a little bit about the role that campaign donations would have with really any public office. I mean, this isn't exclusive to this position, the county executive position. But anytime I think you see large donations come through, I mean, what's your thought? What's your mindset?
Yeah, I think citizens, if they have a person who they feel like is going to represent them, their thoughts and ideas, and they want to contribute either through campaign contributions or fundraisers or whatever, that's the way to do it. But there comes a point in time and an amount that it seems like you're not contributing to help that person versus you're contributing to try to get something in return at a later date.
Yeah, I mean, even if we don't know that, I mean, it does seem odd because, I mean, what would you say? What would be a appropriate amount for just a regular citizen who thought, man, that man or woman would represent our community well? I'm gonna make a donation to help them buy signs or whatever. I mean, what would be appropriate in your mind?
I would think that a normal person, normal working person would be in the probably $200 to $250 range that they would contribute to someone that they support and want to help.
Yeah. So I think maybe if we focus our talk on entities or groups that have donated maybe at least twice that much, 500 or 1,000 or more, then I think that would be more appropriate than worrying about maybe somebody who donated $80 or $200.
Yeah, no, I mean, we all, people do that. I say we all do that. I don't.
Yeah.
But, that's just part of the political campaign to help buy signs, advertising, and get the word out for somebody that you support.
Well, just for some perspective, a yard sign with a little metal stand cost about $10.
Okay.
So, somebody who was going to donate maybe $100 or $200 to a campaign, they're buying 10, 20 signs, maybe probably putting one of those in their yard, themselves. But that seems about, what you would expect out of a private citizen.
Right,
So,
yes.
So I want to show here some of the main contributors that our current county executive, Julie Giordano, has received since 2022. And you're going to see that there's not a lot of individuals as much as there's entities or causes behind that. And I'd like to spend some time with you to discuss it because I think some of what you and I have witnessed watching the county workings actually shows some of the policies being directed at these high donors, these high campaign donors.
Okay.
Would you agree?
Yes.
Yeah.
Yes.
So right on top, I mean, just recently, Barry Beecham has been appointed. Now, he was not elected. He was appointed to replace Carl Anderton as our state delegate in this for Wicomico County.
Yes.
Now, prior to him being appointed, he has been part of the Republican Central Committee and also donated over $6,000 to Friends to elect Julie Giordano. Have you noticed? I mean, he's been at the meetings prior to him being appointed, and he's still coming now.
Yeah, he has been at the meetings and has been very supportive in the past of the county executive, and for the council to give her what she wants in order for her to do her job.
Yeah, I remember specifically when we were going through the controversy with the confirmations for Matt Leitzel and Heather Langford. Barry did get up there and said, "Look, you just let her have who she
Yes,
wants."
exactly.
But and you've put it so very well many times. That's not what the charter says. We voted in a referendum to say that we want those folks brought to open session. We want to be able to go to our elected representatives and say, "Hey, we're not okay with this person for whatever reason."
Yes, and the classic example of that was Dan Cox, when she tried to get Dan Cox hired in her administration. That was run through the council, and the public outcry was such that it didn't happen.
Well, kind of tied with Barry Beecham, and next on our list is this Delmarva conservative movement. And I think one of the main talking points with this group, whether your political views align with them or not, is it says on their website that they're not a political party. However, their meetings are hosted on South Division Street at the Republican Central headquarters. So it's really hard to discern whether they really are a political party or not, but they have so far donated $2,000 to the Friends to elect Julie Giordano, and that's just since the referendum for question A has been
Has
on the
come
ballot.
along, yes.
So how do you feel about when you have someone who is, I mean, whether you're a Democrat or Republican, it's inconsequential on this question, but if someone says, "Hey, listen, I represent the Republican Central Committee or the Republican Party," but in fact they actually have some sort of affiliation with a subset of that party. I mean, as a private citizen, how does that make you feel?
Well, it just makes you feel like they are trying to circumvent the publicity that would come through it. Saying you're a conservative Republican, well, Republicans are conservative. So, it's a Central Republican Committee, and it should be.
Yeah. I mean, just like myself, I mean, I identify as a conservative Republican. I am not a part of the Delmarva conservative movement. And I wouldn't be comfortable attending a meeting at the Republican Central headquarters if I'm not really quite sure who is actually in charge. And I think that's, these campaign contributions actually lend themselves to those questions specifically.
Yeah, and I really think that also probably led to the resignation
Of so many other people.
Of so many other people in the Republican committee that left in the spring.
So we want to take a minute to explain this. You have the Republican Central Committee, and this is an official group that is supposed to represent the Republican platform in Wicomico County. The Republican Club is a group of people who identify as Republicans, and they spend a lot of their time raising money for potential conservative candidates in the area. The Delmarva conservative movement on their site says that they're not, in fact, a political party, although they're having their meetings at the Republican Central headquarters. But then this area is very gray of where one group starts and one group ends, and really who's in charge of both groups.
Yes, and it's hard to, in my world, to say you're not affiliated with something when you post with full of political signs.
Yes.
If you're not affiliated with this group, why are you proudly posing in front of political signs for whatever party you're with? You can't have it both ways.
Well, and just being open and transparent is really the right way to go.
Yes.
So, talking about a little bit of lack of transparency, whether you're for the taking away the monopoly for the liquor dispensary or not, it's very understanding that a lot of local business owners, when it comes to restaurant owners or maybe even beer store owners, would in fact favor to get rid of the monopoly for some, advantages there. But we've seen through the press conference on July 1st, the current executive, Julie Giordano, and the former delegate, Carl Anderton, said, look, this dispensary bill is really just the first step. think ultimately their goal is to open it up for more liquor stores.
Well, I think the words that Carl Anderton stated that day were, "We've kicked the door open. Now let's go through."
Well, and you can see on this list that we're referencing that there are actually several businesses that have financial ties to that aspect itself. Now, I'm not here to say whether or not they're right or wrong. What I'm saying is, what is the price you pay to get political influence in Wicomico County? You and I were talking $200, $250, maybe $500 just for supporting someone you think would do a good job. But are we starting to step into areas where you're actually buying influence? And when we look at East Coast Management, which is owned by Frank Hanna, this is Brew River. They do a lot in the community, but they've donated over $4,000 to this fund. Is that because they so much believe in the overall process that Julie would bring, or is this in fact a chance to buy influence that would benefit their business interest?
Well, when you look at the contributions in the past versus what the contributions are now, when you have the dispensary bill coming up and the contributions are made through the different restaurants and management groups in Salisbury, and then the county executive is advocating doing away with the dispensary and letting them buy directly from their wholesalers, you just have to look at it and inform your own opinion.
Well, and one other aspect that comes around with this group of individuals is the Greater Salisbury Committee. They came to the county council with the initial legislative resolution last spring to say, hey, we support this. They did not have open meetings. They did not keep minutes. And at the same time, by the time that the legislative resolution hit the floor in Annapolis, there were a couple changes that were trying to be made. If at the end of the day, there are political contributions made that also allow you to have influence, shouldn't it at the very least be the most public and
transparent
way?
Yes, exactly. Yeah, the public should know just exactly. I mean, that was one of the things that Councilman Holloway was very adamant about, that it was a legislative request and not a legislative bill being sent to Annapolis, which meant that if the council approved it, once it got to Annapolis, they could change it and write whatever they wanted.
And they very nearly did.
Yes, yes.
Well, I want to take a break. When we come back, we've touched base on a few of these campaign contributors. I want to go through a few more, and I want to really get your viewpoint on what you think from where you have sat at the county council meetings, and just see just where those policies have fallen into place.
Okay.
We'll be right back. Stick with us. Welcome back to Open Agenda. I'm your host, Joe White. In the studio, sticking around for those segments, Mr. Jim Atkins. Thanks for staying around.
Sure, certainly.
So we had a chance in the first segment to really kind of lay some groundwork for why, at least you should ask some questions about why campaign contributions happen. But let's talk about maybe even some of the more larger contributions that have been made, but also some maybe that are even further away from Wicomico County than we can understand right now.
All right.
I think one of the ones that's real high on the list is the Richardson family. They live out in Powellville, part of the Delmarva Canine Group. I don't fully understand all the aspects of some of the reasoning, and I'm not trying to show that on this show. But in fact, there's campaign contributions just to one candidate in excess of $10,000. What does that say to you?
Well, again, not accusing anyone or stating anything. In Wicomico County, in the small Wicomico County, when an individual is willing to contribute $10,000 to a campaign, you just have to infer your own reference from it.
Well, I think, whether it's merited or not, if it does become the line for supporting a candidate, wouldn't that theoretically take a lot of folks who $10,000 would be way out of their means?
Oh, it would eliminate 90 to 95% of the people in the county who would contribute or are able to contribute that. I mean, if you look at the campaign contributions, the reports don't show minor contributions, But campaigns are run by $5 and $10, $15 donations from the small people.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Well, especially when you're looking at the council members themselves. I mean, to run a campaign for a council member doesn't cost nearly $10,000.
No.
I mean, and that's shown in their campaign finance forms themselves. Let's talk a little bit about the Fraternal Order of Police and Scott Hamilton, who is the president of that. Now, in the last election, the citizens went and we voted to have, in the referendum, to have the executive branch or the county to negotiate directly with the FOP. And I think you and I both agree that that's actually probably a positive thing to really stand up for the law enforcement officers. I mean,
Right.
we're both in favor
No,
of that.
exactly, yeah.
But the transparency of the process, I mean, at one point in September of 2023, the lawyer for the county, our side, so to speak, not that we're really on two different sides, came to the county council, and it seemed as if the negotiations would start at that time. But in fact, did you notice that they didn't start until January?
They didn't start until January, yes.
Now, you spoke many times at the Civic Center, at the county council meetings in April and May. Our county executive missed charter deadlines. Is that correct?
She missed chartered deadlines, and she missed or refused to supply the council with any ideas of what the negotiations were, how they were coming, what items might be a sticking point. She just informed the council that when the negotiations were done, that they would be given the information.
Well, we in fact exceeded the deadline,
Past the deadline,
and the county council did have the ability to extend it 15 days.
they did that.
And then we exceeded that. I mean, at one point, Bob Benson, the county council attorney, said, hey, we got a rough draft the day before it was due.
And was not complete.
And it wasn't complete. And
Correct.
that part wasn't put in until 4 days later. So again, the correlation between over $6,000 in campaign donations to one candidate, not a group of candidates, that actually in fact missed charter deadlines for the main talking point, the main interaction. I mean, if it wasn't for the county council, we would have ended up in arbitration with the FOP, which would have meant our law enforcement officers, men and women, would not have had a contract. It wouldn't have been vetted by the citizens in open session. And at the same time, we could have incurred so many more legal fees. Is that accurate?
No, exactly, because it was negotiated by the executive, who said that she was going to negotiate it, and at the same time she's taking major campaign contributions from the organization that she's negotiating with, which resulted in questionable things. I mean, I have 110% support for law enforcement,
Yep.
firefighters. I mean, they need to be compensated, they need to be protected, and they need to be respected. But when you're dealing with contracts, there has to be some openness in the negotiation. And the person, even if it is just the perception, the person who is receiving large campaign contributions can't be the person sitting in the room doing the
Well,
contract.
we still have to have respect and transparency for the taxpayer. I mean,
Exactly.
at the end of the day, the taxpayer, the one who could barely afford a $100 or $200 campaign donation, deserves the same representation in open session that even our law enforcement folks do. Everybody should come out of those negotiations with the best possible outcome, but at the very least, it should be out on open session and everything on the table. But there's a couple on here that actually very much concern me. One of them is St. John Properties. In a very quick, short time frame, they have decided to contribute the maximum in a grouping of $6,000. They're based out of Annapolis. Now, the county executive just did a groundbreaking with them out in Westbrook, on the west side of the county over near the landfill. Not much is known specifically about these folks, and actually it's under Cecil Properties, so we want to make
Correct.
sure that
Yes.
we're accurate, but it is St. John's Properties. It's hard to say just why somebody from outside the area who doesn't know any of us personally, as far as we can tell, would feel so strongly about one candidate to max out the contribution.
Exactly. I mean, again, it's a perception. They're out of the area. They are looking to conduct business in this area, in this county. And lo and behold, here's a $6,000 contribution.
Well, let's do the math. Let's just say we're past question A and we go to a councilmatic form of government. Do you think it would be worth it to someone like that to donate what would in essence be $42,000? You'd have to take the max and somehow have influence or stamina behind 7 different people, or at least 4 of those 7. Wouldn't it be better if we could diffuse the power instead of having one person who maybe could be influenced specifically by a campaign donor? It's really hard to influence 4 out of 7 or even 7 out of 7.
Yeah, I think so, and I think at that point in time, the contributor would probably move on to representatives of the state, our state representatives or state senators, but not to Wycomico County.
Not one position for a county as small as ours.
Exactly.
We are the biggest county on the Eastern Shore of Maryland, but it doesn't mean that we're a big county.
No.
The other one is a lobbyist based out of Timonium, Maryland. Now, I may butcher his name. Is John Fiasto or
Yes.
Fiasto? I looked him up, and again, his campaign donation isn't even on a regular cycle. It's not. So I think one of the misnomers, and I'd like to say this, is our current executive, Julie Giordano, has said she's voluntarily submitted campaign finance forms, even though it's not an election cycle for her. That's actually not accurate at all. She's been forced by the State Board of Elections to do that because she is actively campaigning against Question A, taking donations. The question I have is, why would a lobbyist in Timonium, who specializes in renewable energy, doesn't live here, to my knowledge, hasn't had business here, what would be the purpose of having that support behind one single position here in Wycomico County?
Can't answer that question.
Well, and you know what? We're not going to be able to answer that question here. I think it's a question people should ask themselves. But one thing I think you and I can speak to, because we go to things outside county council meetings. We've been to we watched the executive exclusive from the county executive. We've been to her press conferences. I've covered them for Open Agenda. But when we were at the July 1st press conference that was run, we saw that the liquor dispensary bill wasn't done, right? But then at the legislative breakfast that came out in the September, the top priority from the county executive was a liquor dispensary bill.
Yes.
And we just passed this. So they're not done, wouldn't you say?
No, they're not. And the you could tell by attending the council meetings and being there in person versus what you saw on television. Some of the people who were speaking were not going to be satisfied with buying from distributors.
Yeah.
Some of them were looking for more opportunities, possibly to open more liquor stores, and that's the big concern in the county.
Well, maybe they're getting their campaign contributions ready for
Right.
that influence. So I want to have one more segment. Would you stick around one more segment? There's one entity that we have not covered yet, and I think we should, and that's Eastern Shore Undercover. So would
Okay.
you stick around?
Yep.
We'll be right back. Stay with us. Welcome back to Open Agenda. I'm your host, Joe White. Still in studio with me is Mr. Jim Atkins. Thanks for staying and talking about campaign donations in Wycomico County. So the last one, and the reason why I wanted to save Eastern Shore Undercover for last isn't to bash Earl Campbell or Eastern Shore Undercover. That's not my goal. But I will say that just from press conferences, his statements at referendum hearings and that sort of thing, it's very transparent how he feels. In the last election cycle, and again, Julie's not up for election. So since February of 2024, Earl Campbell and Eastern Shore Undercover have donated $4,000 to Friends to Elect Julie Giordano. One thing that is clear that has been said and been in open session and work sessions with Sheriff Mike Lewis is in fact that Earl Campbell did get police encrypted radios after Wycomico County went to an encrypted radio system. That was a process that cost us a lot of money to encrypt those radios. And instantaneously, one single person, our current county executive, Julie Giordano, did an end run around that system and gave encrypted radios to a civilian. Now, I mean, Earl served he served his community. He was a police officer, but he's not one now. How did that make you feel? I mean, you're a lifetime member of the fire department. How did that make you feel as someone who's been in that public service arena?
You know, you're talking in one hand about you want to protect the emergency providers, police departments, fire departments, and whatever. And then you are giving a encrypted radio, which is purpose is to protect these people. You're giving an encrypted radio to a citizen who runs a blog and puts the information out there. And it's just, the MOU and the way it came about was all very suspicious. Again, there may have been absolutely no negative thoughts about it, but when you sit there and look at the campaign contributions and you see who's benefiting from it, it raises some red flags. And when you have the sheriff, a duly elected official, not under the executive's authority, but a duly elected official, come out strongly against what has happened and concerned about the safety of his officers, you have to respect that.
Well, he has come out against giving out the encrypted radios to civilian. He's come out very strongly for voting for Charter Amendment A. He said that in the work session on August 20th in front of everybody. It's been on PAC 14. But would it be fair to say that maybe political influence costs right about $3,500 to $4,000 right now in Wicomico County?
I would think.
So the question would be, how many of us have that kind of money?
Yeah.
And how do we know it won't be $10,000 on the 2026 cycle or $15,000?
Yes.
I mean, I think
Yes, it's called pay to play. And, you know, you may not be asking for something, but you are asking to have influence and an audience with someone to express your opinions.
so. Everything you've seen the last couple of years, and I know you've been going much longer. What is your opinion on voting for Question A?
I believe that Question A, the way the charter in Wicomico County is set up, that the councilmatic form of government is a better form because of the way the charter is.
I think for me, and a lot of folks have asked me lately, why do I support it? And it's very obvious I support voting for Question A. And it's because we are still the only county in this area, this part of the Eastern Shore of Maryland, that has, in the last 18 years, no one else has switched to an executive form. And you're always going to have one council member or two that you don't agree with. But you talk about hiring that administrator. I'd like to see that position. Right now, the administrator is selected by one single person. I would like to see that qualified administrator to have to at least be vetted out over 7 people.
Yes, well, if you go back to what Councilman Hastings stated when all this first came up with the amendment, he wanted, which is not possible to do, but he wanted there to be specifications and requirements for the qualifications exactly for the county executive.
Yeah.
You can't do that.
But you can for the
But
administrator.
you can for an administration, and that's where this is headed.
So if we want to do that, it would be better to have 7 folks have to vet that person
They need
versus
to be vetted,
one.
and then you know there's got to be 4 people who think that this person is qualified to do that job.
And it's less likely that these high dollar campaign contributions can work through any one executive or any one administrator, because it really wouldn't
Exactly.
matter.
Yes, you're not dealing with a person anymore. You're dealing with a group of people.
Well, thanks for your time for coming in today. Thanks for all your observations. Thanks for being such a great speaker at the podium there. And we still do encourage people to come out and
Yes,
make
we
their
do.
research.
Come out and see what's going on at the council and let them know your opinion.
Yeah.
Because it does matter at times.
It really does.
Yes.
Well, thanks for watching this episode of Open Agenda. We'll be back next week with another new episode.
We need somebody who's going to stand up to this bully and hold her accountable. We want the citizens of Wicomico County to vote yes for Amendment A. That's what we want.
Oh, they're going to love this when it airs.